Right now, while you sit here listening, there are millions of men quietly living in what can only be described as psychological captivity, and most don't even realize it. They think they're being noble, patient, committed partners. They tell themselves they're doing the right thing, being good husbands, keeping the peace. But beneath that surface of calm is a slow, invisible destruction, one that doesn't leave bruises on the body, only fractures in the soul. We've been taught to believe that abuse has a face, that it comes with shouting, violence, or bruises. But there's another kind that leaves no trace, and it's far more insidious. Society has convinced you that men are the abusers and women the victims. That's the rule, no exceptions. Yet here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to admit. Women can be just as violent, only their weapons are emotional, psychological, and perfectly legal. When a man attacks, the damage shows. When a woman attacks, the damage hides inside your mind. One uses fists, the other uses shame, silence, and control. And when it's over, one heals in months, the other never does. Because how do you prove a wound no one can see? I remember working with a man named Robert, 60 years old, successful entrepreneur, respected by everyone who knew him, built a company from nothing, provided for his family, lived what most would call the dream. Yet behind closed doors, he was living like a ghost in the house he paid for. His wife hadn't spoken to him in 3 years, not a single word. They shared the same bed, the same roof, the same silence. She moved around him like he didn't exist. He waited until she left for work before leaving his room, just to avoid her presence. He cooked separately, ate alone, watched the clock until she was gone again. "How did this happen?" he asked me. "The truth?" Slowly. That's how it always begins. Quiet erosion. It started small. "I don't like your friends. They're a bad influence." So he stopped seeing them. Then it was, "Fishing is childish. Golf wastes money." So he dropped his hobbies. Then came family. "Your brother disrespects me. Your mother doesn't like me." So he distanced himself from them too. Step by step, she cut every lifeline that connected him to the outside world until the only person left in his life was her. And once she had complete control, the affection disappeared. What made it worse was that he thought this was normal. He believed he was being loyal. That's how psychological violence works. It hides under the disguise of love. It doesn't need to shout or hit. It just convinces you that obedience equals harmony, that silence equals peace, that submission equals maturity. And when you finally start to notice the cracks, it's already too late. Your confidence is gone. Your identity has been rewritten. You start doubting yourself. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I deserve this. There's a reason this kind of abuse rarely gets talked about. It doesn't make headlines. There are no photos, no police reports, no broken bones. Just broken men walking around with smiles that don't reach their eyes. Men like the lawyer whose wife joked about his failures in front of clients. Men like the teacher whose partner refused intimacy for years. Blaming stress while quietly rewriting his reality. Or the father sleeping in the guest room of his own house, terrified that setting a boundary might cost him his kids. Every one of them thought they were exceptions. They thought, "She's just emotional," or "She'll calm down." But the truth is far darker. This isn't chaos, it's control. Psychological violence isn't random. It's deliberate, systematic, and devastatingly effective. Because when a woman weaponizes emotion, logic can't defend you. You can't reason with guilt. You can't debate silence. You can't fight back against manipulation without being labeled the aggressor. The cruelty of it all is that she doesn't need to hit you. She just needs to make you believe you deserve the pain. She'll convince you that she's the victim, that her coldness is your fault, her unhappiness your failure. And every time you try to fix it, you walk deeper into the trap. That's why men stay for years, not because they're weak, but because they don't understand what's being done to them. They think endurance is virtue, that patience will heal it, but it doesn't. It only feeds her power. Robert told me once, "I feel like I'm disappearing." And he was right. Every compromise, every apology, every silence carved a little more of him away, until there was nothing left but a shell. A man imprisoned inside his own life. And here's the part that should make every man listening sit up straight. What happened to him isn't rare. It's happening all around you, in quiet kitchens, in expensive homes, behind polite smiles. Most men will never even realize it's abuse until they're too far gone to fight back. But once you understand the tactics, once you see the weapons, you'll never look at relationship problems the same way again. Because this isn't love gone wrong. It's psychological warfare disguised as affection. Once you've seen what's happening beneath the surface, you can't unsee it. What looks like a normal relationship often hides a quiet, methodical breakdown. Every abuser has a playbook, and in psychological warfare, the weapons are words, silence, and emotion. Each one designed to confuse, guilt, and reshape the man until he no longer recognizes himself. The first and most common weapon is guilt manipulation. Everything becomes your fault. She's unhappy because you're not attentive enough. She's distant because you don't communicate the right way. She cheats, and somehow you pushed her to it. Every conflict ends with you apologizing for crimes you never committed. One man I worked with, an engineer, science, disciplined and rational, was convinced by his wife that he was a sex addict. His crime? Wanting intimacy more than once a month. She told him he was perverted, obsessed, that he needed therapy, and because he loved her, he believed it. He sat in a counselor's office trying to fix a desire that was perfectly normal. Meanwhile, she sat at home congratulating herself for taming him through manufactured shame. That's how guilt works. It flips the moral compass so completely that you feel wrong for wanting connection, respect, or peace. Psychologists call this introjected blame, where someone's guilt becomes your burden. Once she learns she can use shame to control you, everything you do becomes a test of obedience. The second weapon is isolation, and it's brilliant in its subtlety. She doesn't forbid you from seeing your friends outright. That would make her look controlling. Instead, every time you plan to go out, a new fight appears. Not about the event, about something else. You forgot the trash. You were cold to me yesterday. Why are you abandoning me when I'm sad? After a few rounds of this, you stop going out. Your friends fade away. People start saying, "He's whipped," and eventually they stop calling. She never had to say no. She just made every yes too painful to choose. Then comes public humiliation disguised as humor. At gatherings, dinners, or family events, she starts sharing funny stories about your failures. She jokes about your salary, your hairline, your weight. Everyone laughs, uncomfortably, and you sit there trying not to react. Because if you do, you're accused of overreacting, of ruining the mood, of not being able to take a joke. A businessman I knew once told me about a dinner where his wife mocked him all night in front of colleagues. He's trying this new business idea, but you know how he is. All dreams, no follow-through. Everyone chuckled while he stared at his plate. "If I defend myself, I look insecure," he said. "If I stay silent, I look weak." That's the genius of public degradation. It strips your dignity while forcing you to smile through it. The fourth weapon is sex as currency. This one's so normalized that most men don't even see it as abuse. She uses intimacy as a reward system, a behavioral economy. Agree with her? Maybe you'll get affection, disagree, assert yourself, or seek independence. Coldness, rejection, withdrawal. It's a loop of control disguised as love. There's a story of a man named David, married 15 years, who hadn't been intimate with his wife in over 3, not because he stopped wanting her, but because she turned desire into negotiation. Lose weight first. Be more romantic. Spend more time with me. The conditions never ended because the goal was never closeness. It was power. He told me, "I realized I was training for affection like a dog learning tricks." Then comes the financial control, but not through direct theft, through shame and comparison. My friend's husband just bought her a Tesla. My sister's family vacations in Europe every year. Why don't we live like them? You end up chasing lifestyles you can't afford, working yourself to exhaustion to buy temporary approval. And the cruel part? If you fail to provide, you're a disappointment. But if you work too much to provide, you're neglectful. The game is rigged. You lose no matter what. What makes all of these tactics so effective is how invisible they are. None of them look like abuse. They look like normal relationship problems. But underneath is a systematic conditioning process. Each tactic chips away at autonomy until you've been trained to associate peace with submission. You learn that the only way to avoid chaos is to agree, to apologize, to obey. And here's the deeper truth. Every man has a breaking point. Most don't collapse from the big moments, but from the quiet erosion over years. One day, you wake up realizing you've become the background character in your own life. You're not deciding anything anymore. You're reacting. Her moods, her opinions, her emotional weather determine your day. You exist to keep her calm, to avoid the storm. But these are only the surface weapons, the ones that drain you slowly. The real destruction begins when she starts using what you love most, your children, your sanity, your compassion, against you. This is where the game turns brutal. When guilt, silence, and sex no longer get the reaction she wants, she moves to the weapons that strike deepest: your children, your sanity, your sense of reality itself. The sixth weapon is the children. Every father I've worked with who's been through psychological abuse says the same thing. I stayed for the kids. That's exactly what she's counting on. She knows the legal system favors her. She knows a man who walks away loses everything: the house, the custody, and half his income for the next decade. So she threatens the one thing you can't bear to lose. You'll never see them again. I'll tell them what you did. I'll make sure they grow up knowing you abandoned them. It's the most vicious form of manipulation because it weaponizes your love. I once spoke with a contractor whose wife looked him dead in the eye and said, "I can treat you however I want, because if you leave, I win." And she was right. The system guaranteed it. He stayed another 7 years, living in silence, paying for his own imprisonment, terrified of losing the right to tuck his kids in at night. That's not marriage. That's emotional hostage-taking under the banner of family. The seventh weapon is gaslighting, the slow destruction of reality. She'll rewrite every memory, deny every promise, twist every argument until you don't trust your own perception. I never said that. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. At first, you argue back. You remember clearly. You know what happened. But over time, the constant denial breaks you down. You start second-guessing everything. Maybe she's right. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm the problem. Gaslighting isn't confusion. It's domination through disorientation. A friend once told me, I started recording conversations with my wife because I thought I was losing my mind. When he played them back, he realized he wasn't crazy. She was just rewriting the past with such conviction that reality bent around her words. And because she's more emotionally articulate, more verbally agile, you can't compete. Logic loses to narrative. Then comes emotional terrorism. This is when her emotions become weapons. Panic attacks, crying fits, suicidal threats. Every boundary you try to set triggers a crisis. You end up walking on eggshells, managing her moods like a full-time job. One doctor told me he hadn't attended a professional conference in 5 years because his wife would have anxiety attacks every time he tried to leave. The timing was always perfect, calm all week, breakdown the moment he packed a bag. He said, "She doesn't have anxiety, she has control." The ninth weapon is the victim flip, perhaps the most manipulative of them all. She provokes you for days, weeks even. The jabs, the taunts, the passive aggression build until you finally snap. You raise your voice, slam a door, maybe throw something in frustration. And suddenly, she's terrified. She's crying. She's filming you. She's calling the police. Everything that led to that moment disappears, and only your reaction remains. To the outside world, you've become the abuser she always claimed you were. I knew a man who grabbed his wife's wrist to stop her from hitting him with a lamp. She called the cops. He went to jail that night. The officers laughed when he tried to explain she'd been hitting him for years. "Man up," one of them said. "That's how society responds when men report abuse. Disbelief followed by ridicule. And then there's intermittent reinforcement, the most psychologically addictive pattern ever discovered. Sometimes she's sweet, loving, supportive, the woman you fell for. Other times, cold and cruel. The shift is unpredictable, and that unpredictability hooks your brain. It's the same mechanism that keeps gamblers pulling levers in casinos: random reward. You suffer through months of pain for one good day, telling yourself things are getting better, that she's changing, but she's not. She's conditioning you. By this stage, most men aren't staying out of hope anymore. They're staying out of addiction. You become chemically dependent on her validation. She breaks you, then becomes the only one who can soothe you. That's how she keeps you chained, not with hate, but with the illusion of love. And if all that weren't enough, some women go further. They start using illness as a weapon. Mysterious migraines appear whenever you plan to see friends. Stomach problems surface when you want to visit your parents. Back pain flares up the moment you suggest she work or contribute. The sickness is real to her, psychosomatic, created by the subconscious to maintain control. And you become her caretaker. You can't leave a sick partner. That would make you a monster. Others take it spiritual. God wants you to be more patient. The universe is testing your love. My intuition says you're lying. She becomes the moral authority, the divine interpreter, the enlightened one. Your needs become low vibration. Your pain becomes proof of your toxicity. It's manipulation disguised as transcendence. By this point, the abuse isn't just personal, it's systemic. Society enables it. Try finding a shelter for abused men. Try reporting emotional torture to the police. Try explaining to a therapist that your wife uses panic attacks to control you. You'll be laughed at, dismissed, or told to communicate better. The entire system is designed to protect women from abusive men, not the other way around. And that blind spot is what allows this cycle to keep spinning. This is the stage where most men give up, not because they're cowards, but because they're out of options. The law won't help them, therapy won't believe them, their friends have disappeared, and so they retreat into silence, convincing themselves it's not that bad. But it is, and it always gets worse. Once a man reaches that stage, isolated, drained, doubting his own sanity, he has two paths left: collapse or awakening. What separates the men who break from the men who rebuild isn't strength, it's recognition. You can't fight an enemy you won't name. The first step out of the fog is realizing this. You're not crazy and you're not weak. You're being abused. That confusion in your head, that numb exhaustion, that feeling that no matter what you do, it's never enough. That's not you failing as a partner. That's what psychological warfare feels like from the inside. Once you name it, the spell starts to crack. The second step is to document everything. Every time she twists words, threatens, or guilt trips you, write it down. Not because the world will believe you, but because you'll need those records to remind yourself what's real. When she says, "That never happened," you'll have proof, not for her, but for your own clarity. Create a log she can't erase, because rewriting reality is her favorite trick. Third, start rebuilding your support network quietly. Isolation was her strategy. Reconnection is yours. Reach out to old friends, even if it feels awkward. They don't need to know everything, just that you'd like to catch up. Surround yourself with people who remember who you were before she started breaking you down. That's how you recover a sense of reality. Fourth, secure your finances, discreetly. Open an account she doesn't know exists. Start saving, even small amounts. Collect copies of documents, assets, evidence. Not because you want war, but because if it comes, you'll be ready. A man who has no resources is easy to control. And then comes the hardest truth of all. Leaving might cost you everything. Your home, your kids, your reputation. She will smear you, lie about you, and twist every story to paint you as the villain. But staying will cost you something far worse: yourself. And once that's gone, there's nothing left worth saving. You must understand, the woman you fell in love with is gone. In fact, she may have never existed. That version of her, the gentle, affectionate, understanding one, was the mask that hooked you. The real her is the one who belittles, isolates, and controls. The kindness was bait, the cruelty is the truth. The illusion of us against the world was just the cage closing. Men tell me all the time, but I love her, and maybe I can fix this. You can't fix someone who doesn't see themselves as broken. In her mind, everything is working perfectly. You do what she wants, she gets what she needs, and if you're unhappy, that's your fault. The system functions because you keep participating. The only way to win is to stop playing. That means confronting your greatest enemy, not her, but your ego. Because men would rather die than admit they're victims. Pride whispers, "I can handle it. It's not that bad. I'm strong enough to endure it." But that pride is the chain that keeps you bound. Your strength isn't in endurance. It's in the courage to walk away. One man told me, "I'd rather lose everything than wake up at 60 and realize I never lived a single day free." That's the reality waiting at the end of this road if you don't act. A lifetime of regret disguised as patience. The question isn't whether she'll change. It's how many more years you'll sacrifice waiting for a miracle that will never come. You have one life, one chance, and every day you spend living under control is a day you'll never get back. Tomorrow won't be different. The cycle doesn't end because she feels sorry. It ends because you decide it ends. Look around your home, your life, your habits. How much of it is truly yours? How much of your voice have you muted just to keep the peace? How much of your joy have you traded for her approval? The clock is ticking, and she's counting on you being too scared, too tired, too broken to leave. But here's the thing. You can leave. You can rebuild. You can reclaim everything she took piece by piece. There's peace on the other side, but only if you stop confusing pain with loyalty. You deserve better. You deserve respect. You deserve love that doesn't have strings attached. The door has been open this whole time. The only question left is whether you'll walk through it. Because if you don't, if you stay another year, another decade, hoping it'll get better, one day you'll look back and realize she was right about one thing. You were too scared to leave. Prove her wrong. Walk out of the cage. Take back your freedom while there's still time.